I collapsed on the floor and everything hit back. I managed to crawl into the bathroom. Heart was pounding. I could hardly breathe. I took my last breath and it went right out of me. And I noticed when that happened, my hand was out trying to pet my dog, but my hand came out of my hand and went through the dog's chin, and suddenly I just rose right out of my body, above my body. I'm floating, and all of a sudden I'm in this dark void heading toward a light.
I've probably done, 12 or 15 interviews on near-death experiences, and so far your description matches some of the common features, but yours takes a very radical, different turn.
I didn't know who was touching me. Someone touched me and it forcefully set me down, and so I instantly knew I was standing before Jesus. He had a hood over his face, and I looked at his wrist. He had holes in his wrist. I could see blood caked on his beard, and I made the realization that if I was alive back then, I would have crucified Christ.
Our guest today had a hellish near-death experience that haunted him and ultimately changed his life. Well, I've done multiple videos about how to assess near-death experiences, and in particular, hellish near-death experiences. I've never interviewed someone who claimed to have experienced one. Yet the skeptic in me emerges because if someone were to invent a story that would sell books and make money, a near-death experience of hell would be up there. Author Brian Melvin, I've been looking forward to having you on for a long time and talking about your story. But let the skeptic in me jump out and ask this question. Why should listeners and viewers believe the dramatic, life-changing story you are about to tell?
Well, for one, not everybody accepts it. That's the thing. It's you get a lot of flack from it. I wouldn't be doing this if I was trying to get money out of it, which I'm not, and I definitely have not. That'd be another matter. I don't sensationalize it. And what happened, and I suffer from long-term effects of drinking bad water, which is I contracted cholera, and I had the what do you call it, the neurotoxin from the algae that's in it, and other stuff, living organisms that I drank in that putrid pond water that was inside of a cooler accidentally. And I still suffer the effects. It affects my nerves in my gut, and I suffer some severe attacks. I've been whisked to the hospital several times. So no, I'm not making this up. This actually happened. I know it's difficult for skeptics to believe because first thing is you got all the fake NEDs out there. You have the fake people who are trying to sensationalize and make money. Just assure you that I'm not that person.
All right, we'll jump in. I'm looking forward to it. And just so people know the effects that you face, that was from the condition you were in when you went into the state in which you had the near-death experience. But we will get to that. Okay, so before we get to your experience, tell us a little bit, like, what was your childhood like? Were you or your family religious before you had this hellish near-death experience?
Well, my family's primarily, in that side of the family, are Southern Baptists and Pentecostal and Methodist, but my parents were Southern Baptists. So I grew up in a Southern Baptist background. My parents always took me to church. And I did not really listen. I grew up in a time in south of Washington, D.C. during the 60s as a child. And so we had a lot of stuff thrown at us, at that time period. And so we had relatives involved in the peace movement and protesting and rioting that went on. And it was a time of social upheaval and change. And so I grew up in that. And just say that I kind of started questioning things. And I always attribute my fall to the Bullwinkle cartoons.
Okay.
They had Simon and his dog. They go on this time machine. And so they're always talking about Aristotle and Plato. So I went to the library, and a young kid, our reading vocabulary back then is a lot higher than it is today. And so I'd go to the library and get Plato's Republic, and I started reading it. I remember sitting there and go, "Mom, what does this word mean?" She slammed the dictionary on the table and look it up yourself. So I had to look up the words, and I fell in love with Plato's Republic, and I wrote a paper about children's liberation from their parents.
Oh, wow.
And then my mom found it, and she says, "You hate us that much?" And I felt even smaller than what I was. I ripped that up and had to do another paper.
You captured it this way in your book. You said, when church services were being held, we could never approach the door of that place because Christians were viewed as the enemy of our enlightened freedom. After all, the
Mhm.
movies told this to us, and magazines were replete with articles of fallen, hypocritical Christian men and women. So you not only didn't believe this, you thought it
Yeah.
was oppressive and holding back your enlightened worldview. That's kind
Yeah,
of where
yeah.
you're at. Is that fair?
That's where I was, a very young, early age, and I had some really interesting other relatives of like a Pentecostal, and they would scare you and scare me as a kid. I didn't want none of that. And I also grew up in and I don't have no offense to any Calvinists, but I grew up in a very Calvinist area and predestination, and that turned me against God
Mm,
explicitly, those things, because you, you hear it as a kid constantly, and you have questions, and nobody answers your questions.
mm. So, one more quick question. How old were you when you had the near death experience?
I was 22.
Oh,
I was
22.
I was
Okay.
46 years ago.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. All right. So my son is 22. That's really fascinating. So let's get into the experience itself. Tell us maybe some of the details of what happened leading up to it. What was the medical condition that led to you temporarily dying?
Well, I worked construction site, an electrician, and training for electrician, or journeyman in Tucson, Arizona. I moved to Tucson to get out of the craziness of what I was involved in at the time. And so I got a job, moved down there. Some friends moved in with me, got a duplex. So we had a little duplex, Swan and Palo Verde area of Tucson. And so I was at the job site in the southern part of Tucson doing. They're doing. You go to work about 4 in the morning, or even 3:30 in the morning, because it's too hot after 12 noon to do
Yeah.
anything. So and so I was sitting there, and I was doing ground. I was doing working in the ditches with another guy, leveling out so we could lay our pipes for pedestals and all that. But besides all that traditional stuff, it gets too hot. You go into the apartments and start doing some wiring. And so our our my supervisor was a born again, turn or burn type Christian with bumper stickers on there. We used to rib him and make fun of him all the time. And he was our boss, but he never fired us. But it was he had a cooler in the back of his truck, and him and his family or his kids went to Nogales, Mexico, and his truck overheated that he used for work. That's what he took, and filled it up with creek water down there and set it in the back of the cooler. And so it's been percolating. And so he had two coolers. Everybody had two coolers, and the fresh water cooler in the back of the truck was empty. And I thought the other was the spare. So I just wasn't an unusual spot. So I picked it up and had water in it. And so the other guy, we're really thirsty. So, it's one of those big igloos, and I was buffed in and picked it up, and I was just guzzling the water, and it was all warm and slimy, and I handed it to the other guy. He spat it out. So we opened it up, and that's when I still have the memory of this. There was sort of a reddish brown algae, lack of oxygen. There were fungus inside, like seaweed or something inside of it, green mold, the the algae and the stuff floating on top, and then in the water, little black dot swimming, and what looked like a piece of flat spaghetti, a noodle about yay big with an eyeball on it swimming around. So that's what I drank. So I contracted cholera, and I had the neurotoxin from the algae, and who knows what else. I had three separate things. I had cholera, I had the neurotoxin, and I had a form of some type of dysentery, which I can't remember now. But
Yeah.
it was.
Details.
I should not live. I should not have lived.
Got it.
I should
Okay.
not.
So
I should not be here.
that makes total sense why you would go into that physical state that you did. So, what happened? Did you start getting sick? Did you faint? And then did you go into this near death experience? Like, tell us the rest of the story.
Well, it follows a predictable pattern. You look it up in any medical journal, and with it, what I did, I got home. I thought, well, Jack Daniels, Jose Cuervo, and all the other booze I could drink would kill anything, and that did not work. So I went to work in the morning. It was real early, so it was about right around 12 hours later the first symptoms hit, and then I was sent home from the construction site, and it was probably about the close to the third day when my roommates that I rent the rooms out with, my friends from back east with me, wanted to take me to the hospital. And I said, no, I don't want to ruin your vacation plans. They had plans to go up to a friend they have up, a relative, and they had a small plane. They're going to fly up to the Grand Canyon that day. So I just told them, I don't want to ruin your trip. I'll be okay. But I was getting worse. They're adamant about taking me to the hospital. I resisted. And then with cholera, you can look it up. You lose your body fluids both ends, and your stomach is an excruciating pain, like razor blades and all
Mm.
this stuff. Um, and I was dehydrating, and when your body goes into shock before you die, this is a medical fact with cholera, you feel great. You get up, the pain's gone, the fever's gone, everything's gone. That's what happened the day that they were going to leave. So I got up and I said, okay, I'm fine now. It's over. I feel great. So I got up and got some water, trying to sip it. And my dog was happy to see me bouncing around. And I felt fine, but I looked terrible. They wanted to take me to the hospital anyway. I said, no, go on. And they drove off. I saw them drive off, and my friends were shaking their heads, calling me some expletives. And, they had a neighbor coming in to check on me in case I needed help. And that's who found me. But right afterwards, I collapsed on the floor and everything hit back. I managed to crawl into the bathroom. This took a long period of time. It's easier to talk about it, but it took several hours to crawl from the kitchen to the bathroom, and then from the bathroom into my bedroom. I managed to prop myself on the bed, and heart was pounding. I could hardly breathe. All I could do was an excruciating pain. My fever was rattling my teeth, and my dog was licking my hand, and I took my last breath. It went right out of me, and I noticed when that happened, my hand was out trying to pet my dog, but my hand came out of my hand and went through the dog's chin, and suddenly I just rose right out of my body above my body, just like that. So I lost my atheism right there.
Okay. So that convinced you were having an out of body experience while
hmm
your body is dying, so to speak. And then, like, what did you see? What happened?
Well, the most important part is I was a militant anti-Christian atheist at that time. Had all kinds of people praying for me, my parents, and uh, the new Campus Crusade of Christ, that was all big in that time frame, and the Jesus movement people were praying for me all in the area that I grew up in. So I just floated above my body, and I looked down, and I didn't look too good. I was like, you have no elasticity in your skin, so if you take your arm and you pinched it, your skin would stay up. There's no elasticity. You have no moisture. And I was very gaunt looking. I was sort of a whitish with blue blotches on my skin, just blue, sort of a white, gray, blue blotches. And my dog was frantic and going around in circles and yipping, and barking. I think somebody would come. And I was chilling out. I felt great. I said, no more pain. I felt wonderful. And so I floated against the ceiling and I looked up, and all of a sudden, my whole body turned face to the ceiling. And, I'm nearsighted, but I could see across the room. I could see perfectly well. I could hear, and it was like entering into the ultimate reality. It was like everything was pristine clear. There were colors you normally don't see with your natural eyes, and everything. And I could hear the neighbors fighting. I could hear the kids kicking the can down the street. I could hear all that pristine clearly, and turned and faced the ceiling, and there is the swirl texture of uh, they have there. They take a trowel and they twirl it. There was a fingerprint inside one of the folds of the trowel, and you wouldn't see it if you didn't know where it was. And when I came back, I climbed on a ladder and looked, and there was the fingerprint. I know as skeptics, nobody would even listen to me, but you just have to bear the testimony. And I don't mind skeptics. I don't mind people doubting me. They can argue all they want, and that's fine. I'm just required to show mercy and forgive and move on. But So I allow people to criticize all they want. But
Sure.
anyway, I floated above there and I went through the ceiling, went past the swamp cooler, and the swamp cooler had a baling wire and a bandana around the access port. And you can't see that from the ground. A month or so later, after I came back, I went up there to change. I made a deal with the landlord to cut off some rent. So I went up and changed the water filter on the swamp cooler. And sure enough, there was baling wire and a bandana around it. And being an electrician, I fixed all that for the guy and put screws back in and did everything for him and fixed it. And so I saw that, and I went through, saw the kids kicking a can down the street, and then I just went into a black void heading toward a light. And this is 1980, and I never heard of anything. Being an atheist, I would have never have once believed anything like this could happen. I would doubt it. I'd mock and scoff just like the rest of them do, you know. But when it's happening to me, I'm still alive. I'm more alive than I am now. And I'm floating, and all of a sudden I'm in this dark void heading toward a light that I never heard anyone ever talk about before.
Mm.
Never.
I've probably done, I don't know, 12 or 15 interviews on near-death experiences, and so far your description matches some of the common features: better hearing, better clarity, feeling more alive, leaving your body, heading towards a tunnel. But yours takes a very radical, different turn. Hence, you describe it as kind of a hellish or a dark encounter. What happened?
Yeah, so I was floating through that dark void heading toward a light, and I could hear this beautiful, profound music. And I'm an amateur musician, play guitar and stuff, and been in bands and all kinds of things. And musical instruments I can't describe, and the singing was in a different language, but I understood every single word, and they were extolling how great God was and extolling his character traits and his nature. And it was profound, and you learn things. And I could hear someone speaking to me from the distance. And then I also had real snippet of life reviews. They're real instant, but they seem like they took forever. When you die, you're in what is known as eternal time. There's no way I can express it or explain what it is. It still affects me to this day. There's no way to explain it. And it's like past, present, and future all rolled into one. How do you explain
Mm.
that? Anyway, floating through that void, I felt this really profound sense of love hitting me
Hmm.
and all this stuff. But I wasn't realizing that when I was seeing my life reviews, the God was showing me how many times he saved my life. I've been almost shot for several times. I've been in some people call it initiation with a knife fight, but it got a little out of hand. But somehow I took the knife out of the guy's hand, and I was in the group after that. But and car accidents, so many, 3 or 4 car wrecks, almost. I mean, one time I was drunk driving to all my friends in my father's station wagon on Gallows Road in Virginia, and we went over a hill and went airborne. I was 2-lane road, kind of turned, and there was a tree there heading toward it, and the car literally moved and got in the lane. I didn't hit anybody coming on the second lane. I had no control over the car. And when I got to the bottom of the hill, all my buddies were saying, "Come on, let's do it again." I said, "No." I was so drunk, I didn't want to do that, but I could never. But the Lord showed me; He spared my life. He had an angel, though I didn't see an angel, just moved the car, kept me alive, and he showed me. I spared you so many times. I showed you through nature. You like to hike. You went fishing. You took your machete. You chopped your way into the Upper Potomac River or Shenandoah, chop a place down and fish all night by yourself with your dog. And you look up at the stars and see the sky, and you denied me. I knocked on your door all the time. That's what it was. That was like what was coming to me in a nutshell. And so when I got closer to the light, I saw the light coming from a rock suspended in space. Looked like a city on the other side. Then that cleared off, and I saw it looked like a burning pile of coals off in the distance. And then I came floating, and I noticed the light was coming from a person on that rock, and as I came near him, he stood up. It's like a rock suspended in space, and there was like a rock ledge with a little seat on it. And he got up off of it, and he walked down some stairs, and I landed feet first in front of him, and I fell face down hard as you can imagine, and I didn't get hurt. And then someone or something picked me up very gently, not gently, but with force. But I feel like I didn't know who was touching me. Just someone touched me and just forcefully set me down. And so I instantly knew I was standing before Jesus. He had a hood over his face, and I looked at his wrist. He had holes in his wrist. I could see blood caked on his beard. And I made the realization that if I was alive back then, I would have crucified Christ. That's how much I hated God. I would have drove the nails, and that was made really clear to me. Kind of upsets me a little bit, even right now, to realize what the Lord was showing me. He says, I showed you great love. What did you do with my love? What did you do with the gift I gave you? I mocked you. I scorned you. Oh, how I treated other people. I betrayed people. I lied about them. I sold them for 30 pieces of silver. I denied them. I abandoned them. I got in fights. I beat up people, literally beat up people with my word. I slandered. I always went like, Jesus before Herod, if you're really God, you would not let all the babies die. If you're really God, you would do it my way. If I was really God, and all those answers were hitting you right in the face, and you go, you ain't in. You ain't all that in a bag of chips. And I saw myself what I was really like. This is a part where I think that the gospel message really lacks, is that they have talking points, which are fine. It has its fruit, but no one explains what the iniquity in our heart is, how we are responsible, and what we do to each other has repercussions beyond anything. You're drunk, your alcoholism, whatever, you're destroying yourself, destroying other people. And there's an accounting for that, and he came to spare us of that. That was made so plain to me, standing there, being judged. God's love judged me for mocking his love and making demands that you must do it my way, or I'm not going to have anything to do with you, God. That was my attitude. Maybe that's many people's attitudes now. That leaves an effect on you. It's left an effect on me. It's one of the reasons I wrote the book. I wrote my book not to make $1 million. I just wanted to tell people what happened, leave a few copies around so when I'm gone, some people can get saved. That's all I'm doing, is trying to get people saved.
Okay, so you kind of stop the story having seen Jesus and having this awareness and thoughts about kind of the darkness in your heart, your sinfulness. But in the book, it still takes, at this stage, it does match a lot of positive near-death experiences. At least people describe it that way. But it kind of takes a dark turn, and you describe some creatures and characters in this stuff. And I'll let people read the book to get the details. But give us a sense of how this turned not just an awareness of your own sin, but just turned dark and scary and haunting for you as much as you're comfortable sharing.
Yes, I'm sure. Well, I was judged, and I departed off to Jesus' right hand side. I mean, my right, his left. Went through a little door, opened up like a scroll, and I went through it. I went in as in a tunnel heading toward another light. So I asked the Lord for years, why did I ever come back? It weighs heavily on you. Why? This is 1980. I never knew that I would be addressing all these positive near-death experiences, because that's mine goes counter that, because I was gone through the veil. I saw through the deception. And I'll explain that in a second. So I went through this tunnel-like vortex. It was like the inside of a tornado, and sight, sound, cussing, slurping, foul language, screams and shrieks, and heat that could hit you in the face, like melt your eyeballs out, or your tongue cleaves to the roof of your mouth. It's that hot. Hotter than Tucson. And and so all of a sudden I landed, and I thought I was going to hell, but then I landed on the ground and I bounced up and I wasn't hurt. I looked and I saw a house on a hill, I was on another hill, and two hills were made a sharp descent there. And I thought, and I said, this doesn't look right. It's hot. And all of a sudden, the roars and the noises I heard faded out, and all I could hear was really nothing. Excuse me. Excuse me. Sorry. So I didn't hear anything other than being in there. It was kind of silence, and it sounded like the wind was roaring or blowing, but that was some other sound. And I was just stood up. I looked out, and all of a sudden, these people come running out of the house and welcomed me. They came down, and more people came up, and they said, "Welcome to paradise. Don't you feel the love here, Brian?" And they were slapping me on the back and it was a sickly, sweet type of love where somebody wants to be your best friend, but they have a dagger behind your back. And they're ready, and that's the type of feeling I got. And before I arrived there, before I was sent there, this is what Jesus said just before I was sent to this place. He said, when you arrive at this place and you feel a sense of overwhelming, say my name and my title. Okay. And went on and he said something else. The option for your return is yet to be decided. That kind of weighed heavily on me. And you're dead, you're more alive than you are now, and I'm flummoxed. I had a deer in the headlight look. I was just judged. I saw myself what I'm really like on the inside, and it wasn't pretty. And then no matter what type of camouflage I used, and good old boyness, whatever I tried to use, this was not going to cover it. And now I'm in this place, and people welcome me to paradise. And then I felt a sense of overwhelming because I began to see the things. They were not people. They began changing into these hideous-looking beings. And some of them reminded me of gargoyles without wings, but they're more like Pazuzus. Later on, I did some research and looked at some old Mesopotamian reliefs, and some are like Pazuzu, like little chubby ones to skinny ones, and some with wings, some without. And then others were all kinds of shapes, hideous-looking things. Some of them look kind of sweet, cute, and then hideous. And then this lizard-looking thing came up to me and started talking to me and told me to follow it. Curse God, curse me, follow me. I offer you half the kingdoms, follow me. So I had no choice, so I followed it, and he stuck his hand in the horizon and ripped it open and stepped out of this cell. The Bible talks about there's chambers of death, cells. Isaiah 24 talks about hell being like a dungeon with cells. Ezekiel chapter 32 talks about hell, the pit of hell, being round about with cells embedded in the wall. There are different degrees and levels of torment in hell. I'll explain that in a minute. So I stepped up out of this cube or this cell, turned around. I was amazed at how small it was inside. But when I was inside, it looked large. And that's when this thing told me something. When I wrote the book, the editors told me to take out all the cuss words. This thing, then I got criticized. Oh, you make them sound like pirates. No, I had to make them a rhyming sound. I had to take the cuss words out because they speak in a rhyming, like a snake ready to strike you. And so I try to convey that in the book. I don't know if I was successful, but so anyway, it was just telling me, follow it. And inside, eternity holds no bounds. And, it can be as small as an ant's hole to as large as a continent, just the illusion. The best thing I can think of is Star Trek: The Next Generation, the holodeck. And I wrote this is way before that. And that's what it was like. It was, and then people were in their places, and some of them would arrive there, and they'd be meeting with dead relatives, or they think they're in paradise. There's always a sense of where they see first, but then all of a sudden they think they're in paradise. And I just make a long story short. Went to I kept looking inside the cells and seeing people, and it was like a download in your mind. You got a life history of the person. And I came to, in the book, I wrote about her, and I didn't realize why I wrote about her until years later. A deer pudding. She was killed in a car wreck. And so I saw her come down, drop down in front of her, like a tornado vortex, like I was in, dropped her down in front of a thing, but I knew what she saw. She thought she was in paradise at first, and she saw her farm, and she knocked on the door, and the door opened. That was her cell. She saw her grandmother and relatives, and she entered in there, and so this creature and I walked up there, and he was very animate. They're very fast, and he's rubbing his little hands and stuff, and I'll talk about him in a minute. And but and he's gleeful watching this. I'm watching this, and she thought that she said the same thing to me that I heard. They said to me, "Welcome to paradise. I mean, you feel the love here." "Oh, grandmother, yes, I do. This is wonderful. Oh, you got an eternity here. It's so lovely. It's so lovely. Let's go outside." She didn't realize she was in a small cell, but the floor would move, and she would think like she was. This is so hard to explain. Inside this little cell, and she's walking, and she gets outside, and her grandmother says, "I'm going to bake you your cookies, and then you go to your favorite spot." And as she was walking to her favorite spot, which was in reality miles away, when she was a little girl, she would go there. It was just right there, and that she started getting some doubts and hear something. And then she sat down on a rock, stuck her hand in a stream. There's no water in hell. She pulled her hand up, and there was sand in it. I've seen that several times. There's no water there, but it was like a mirage. And all of a sudden, the rock wasn't a rock, and the trees were two trees around her were not trees. They were creatures like with tentacles, and they surrounded her, and she shrieked when she realized, who she was and what she did. Most people would think this lady, I had a download on her, so I just take a real brief descript on her. She was somebody who, would be an outstanding citizen of the upper class. And she was head of the PTA. She made the best cookies, I guess she got from her grandmother's recipes. I don't know. And she's always in community affairs. Everybody on the outside loved her, but her family knew her differently. She would go to her son or her daughter, "You will not be a fireman. You will not be a spaceman. You will not be. You only have doctors, lawyers, and dentists in this family." And she would beat the kids with a hairbrush until they complied. She was very mean, actually. She was vicious, and she saw herself at that moment. She realized when these creatures surrounded her, it's when she shrieked, "I'm not in paradise." And I never realized my testimony would be going against these things. And I have spoken to some prominent people who questioned and asked me questions about it. And, "Oh, there's too many positive near deaths, so yours is just a fake. You just had some problem, Freudian slip or something." I go, "Well, I appreciate you, brother, but, I'm just saying what you saw there may not be what you think." Because they all come back with the New Age movement and come back with a distaste for basically Christians, and they do.
So we're going
They
to come
get
back.
involved.
We're going to come back to some of that because people have very different experiences. But I'm curious how much what you saw you think was really hell itself, or just a hell type image that was a kind of wake up call. And I want to read a section from your book just for people to capture.
Sure.
I mean, some of this is, it's terrifying. Here's a page 114. You're describing this scene. "He screamed in mortal terror as the creature buried him in a mound of earth. The large beast sat on the cruel man's imagined grave, defecating profusely on it. The dung dripped down on him. The man burst free from his tomb, running and screaming in stark terror. The creature easily caught him, then it swallowed him in one gulp, like how a snake does with its prey. The fiendish small brutes, bound by long, slim chains, gathered around the large, monstrous creature, yelling at it to return the man to the scene. This is a descriptive, harrowing scene. Do you think this is a real depiction of hell, or it's a vision that you had to wake up to how terrible it is to die and be separated from God?"
I think it was a real thing I saw, and it's also to wake people up too. That person was a child molester. That's who I saw, and and he was years later. My professional career, I worked in the sheriff's department, worked through in the jail and the programs unit. Then I transferred out to another organization where I managed treatment teams for sex offenders. And so I don't want to gross anybody out, but I'll be
Yeah.
brutally honest. They form in packs and they like to smear and urinate on their victims. And that's what I was seeing. I didn't know what I was seeing at the time. So years later, I'm dealing with the same type of people who did the same thing and that this man did, and explains why I saw what I saw. So it was a real event that was happening to the person. Who knows what he's going through now?
Mm. Wow, that is pretty harrowing. So, you saw this? You go into way more depth. Did you have a choice to leave? Were you sent out? What happened when you kind of came back to your body?
Well, it's hard to explain. I was scared spitless. I was frightened. I didn't know what was going on. And the book has a lot more detail than we can go in here. But it 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 was, you know, the sights I saw there, still affect me. When I came back, I had post-traumatic stress from it, even though I had, at that time, nobody knew what post-traumatic stress was.
Sure.
It wasn't later. And,
Yeah.
I had all the classic symptoms and nightmares, terrors, also the coming back and having the stomach issues that come with it that developed a couple years later. Um, from long-term effects of that stuff is a reminder that what happened. But anyway, I'm there in hell, and we came to the last cube, and so with this, I call him the guide. I call him lizard breath, not as something to be cute or derogatory. It's just some name that I can just, because that's what he looked like. He was a short thing, about 4'8" and he looked like a little dinosaur. It's hard to explain him, and his breath was so foul that I couldn't tell you how many eyes he had. In a dream or a vision, you don't really smell or taste, especially in a dream. Um, and everything was tactile. I could feel it, smell it in the heat, and the stench is incredible. And this thing was breathing and so foul, and I call him lizard breath. In the year around 2006 and 7, in the Cetera shopping mall in outside of Loveland, Johnstown. It's a shopping area. In the back there, they have a sculpture garden. And so my brother-in-law and my wife, before my wife passed away, we were in 2006, and we were walking along, and I said, that statue there looks like lizard breath. So we walked up to it, and I go, that's the best representation I've ever seen. And so we looked at it. It's in the African art section,
Hmm.
and it's called The Traveler. And had, at that time, the opening day, they had the guy who made the statue, what it represented. It was a Swahili name called The Traveler, who escorted people into the afterlife and also helped them on their journey in this life to get there. And I'm going, wow. Yeah, so that's another confirmation years later. But anyway, that thing was having a fit, and he got to this one cell, and where my cell is, there's no time there. So it was like, this is where my cell would end up, because people don't understand the Bible is correct. There are different degrees of torment. I call it recompense. Payback is more apt. And some people have less, some people have more, but everyone will eventually have more. It's just how the nature of this place works. And so I saw where my cell would be in the future. It was open, looked like a dentist chair, and all these hideous creatures are inside. And my feet, I didn't want to go near the thing. I'm
Sure.
standing pretty close. I'm just saying, I'm in my house. I'm just upstairs, but over there is the far wall where the TV is, and that's probably 20 some feet or so, maybe 25. And it's like, that's how close I was looking in this place. And all of a sudden, I felt a presence coming behind me, and I was weakening. And because I kept saying the name of Jesus the entire time I was there, because he gave me permission to say his name and his title, since I felt that overwhelming. So all I said 100% of the time, I said, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ, like a machine gun. I shot it out. you don't breathe, so you never take a breath, and just came out. And every time I said that, these creatures couldn't grab hold of me. They couldn't chew on me. They could poke me. They could touch you, and they could say all kinds of things. But as long as I said the name, they kind of backed off, and taunting you even more because you say the name. But that's a different story. But and so I just felt this overwhelming. Like, this is my place, and I'm very weak. I could hardly say the name of Jesus anymore. And all of a sudden, a presence was coming behind me, and I thought, well, this could be the devil with a pitchfork and going to throw me in there. My mind's wandering, and I'm thinking of things which I didn't put in the book, but thinking things like, I wish I could tell my parents that I'm not in a nice place. If you can just, wish I could go back and tell them I'm not in a nice place. But there's no way I can do any of that. You're totally abandoned, separated from the love of God. When you arrive and you're judged, you realize what was thrown away, and you throw away the love of God. Or you make God's love has to coalesce with your idea of love, or you can't accept him, which is blatant pride. And anyway, the Bible says a lot about that. But anyway, I was standing there looking at that cube, and I didn't want to move, and yet there was a force moving me toward it, and my feet were going through, I call it dusty, muddy mire. It makes no sense, but that's what it was like. Little moth things would fly out of it, and these worms would come out of it with teeth and shout things at you. And then they fly off, and all of a sudden all the creatures started to run out of the cell, and I saw it look like a dentist chair. That was actually a creature that took off running, but it took an illusion of a chair, but it was actually a creature, a greenish alignment. I can't even, that color green, we don't even have that color green. Our eyes can't see that color green. No way I can describe it. A gray, green blobish thing took off running, and I about ready to give up. I said, this is my fate. I deserve this place. I don't come. I know. I deserve this place. And I thought this was it. So the presence behind me started walking, and it was shaking the ground. And it reminded me of when I was younger, rolling off M80s, 2 or 3 of them underneath a trash can can make those trash cans fly high and shake the ground. And it was like boom, boom, boom. And then I was so weak, and I don't know, I start crying. I don't know. I just very emotional. I know I deserved it. Then he picked me up, and he held me in his arms like a child, and I saw the holes in his wrist, and his bones pulled apart. And I realized I wasn't there, but I would have done the nails. That's how much I hate it. And he carried me out of that pit of hell, because that was the bottomless pit, or the pit of hell. And he brought me back to where it all began, went through that tunnel vortex, and came back, and he set my feet down and stood there. He kind of wiped my tears away, and I was crying. I don't deserve to come back. Bible says, he who is forgiven much loves much. That is true. You learn to love God more than anything. And he spoke to me, and he blew on me, and I went back through the dark void. And when I came back, I floated into my body, just like a rocking leaf, right in feet first into my feet. As soon as I hit my body, all the pain, fever, everything came back, and I could not breathe. And I have no memory of this part when I couldn't breathe. my neighbor had me. I was standing outside. I was leaning against there, and he's hitting me on the back. He got me in his truck. He took me to the hospital. I died several times along the way. I know because I was floating above the cab and telling my neighbor, I go, man, you almost got hit by that Ford Fury. You almost got hit. You ran about how many red lights? He goes, no way. You could have saw what I was doing. Well, I was chilling above the cap of the truck. I was chilling out. But every time I went in my body, it was painful. And I know I was at the hospital. It's a God thing. He had a doctor from India in the ER, and he knew what it was, and they couldn't draw my blood. It was viscous. This was 4 hours later. I was there when I was found, it was 4 hours since. Because I saw the clock when I died, it was 10 till noon, and 4 hours later, and my blood was viscous. And then I remember floating in the hospital room, kind of above my body, sitting down, watching them, hearing this beep, and then all of a sudden I was back in my body with all the pain again, and so I know I died once in there, and they got me back real quick. And I remember this back in 1980. They didn't have this pump or something. This nurse was standing there squeezing a bottle of IV solution into me so they can draw blood and they got my blood out. So, and I remember them talking a little bit to themselves like, ooh, why is he alive? And that's, and you can hear it, but then they made a mistake of giving me stuff for pain. And so I didn't want to go to sleep. And I remember shaking the doctor, says, am I in a cube? He goes, no, Mr. Melvin, you're in the hospital in Tucson, Arizona. Who is president? Jimmy Carter. Who is running for president? Ronald Reagan. I think I'm going to vote for Reagan. That's what I said. I can't stand the gas lines. Something like that. And because I figured if I start talking about cubes, they're going to, that ain't going to go well. Then I was always going like this, breathing on my wrist. They probably thought I was nuts or something. And the breathing, I was breathing. You don't know what it's like to not have breath, come back from, and then you're able to breathe. And so I just sat there, and I don't know how long I was in the hospital. It could have been overnight. I don't remember, but I know that when the guys came back, they picked me up in the morning, and my Pentecostal relatives in Tucson were met me there, and I was too afraid to ask them. Everybody's asking me, what happened? What happened? What happened? I told them nothing. I don't want to talk about it. That's all I said. And so that morning when I got back, they took off to work, and I sat in a beanbag chair, and it's about 94, could be 98 in the duplex. I mean, it was Tucson. We had a swamp cooler that barely worked. And so I just sat in the beanbag chair, and they left, and I had my paregoric that I was taking the evening. And my last vial was at that night, and whatever. And that paregoric they gave me before I left the hospital, I didn't even know what time that was, and the sun was out. So it could have been like 14 hours later or so, maybe. And, you only take it 24 hours or something. Can't remember all the rules. And all the medication, I was sipping some of the electrolyte stuff I was drinking. Could have been Gatorade. I don't remember. And I sat there, and my dog was real happy. My German Shepherd was all over me, like German Shepherds do. And I looked up at the roof, and I said, Lord Jesus, I never want to go back to that awful place. Take me, I'm yours. I owe you my life. I owe you my life. And so people can criticize and all that, and you got it right, but what I saw is what I saw. You can accept or reject it. The truth of Christianity, and all it does is offer a choice. All other religions offer a demand to do it their way, or go by this ritual or that way. All Jesus offers is a choice to accept him. It's free. And you can accept it or reject it. If you reject it, it's on you. That's okay. It's your ball of wax. But he'll keep knocking on your door. Hopefully you'll make the right decision. He makes it simple. all the stuff we see in churches and a lot of religious stuff and fakery and people in white suits and fake healings and all that stuff and shenanigans that going on is not true Christianity. That just turns people off. But real Christianity is a living relationship with the Lord that you learn over time through a process of sanctification that simply heals your broken heart, gives good news to your crushed spirit, sets you free from your whatever's holding you captivity, and whatever holding you bound. It turns your mourning and your depression into joy. He changes your life. It's a process. It takes a little time. But that's the central crux of the gospel, is that Jesus Christ loved us so much that he came. And it's the part that people don't understand. It says in Isaiah 53 that it pleased the Father to crush Jesus. Why? Because he wouldn't have to crush us. And let that sink in. None of us deserve it. Can never be good enough. He just came down because he wants us back. He wants to make us whole, sound of heart and mind. We live in a world that's just destroying itself. It wants to do everything to fragment you and get you off on rabbit trails. He just offers a choice to accept him or reject him. He died to forgive us our sins, and he rose again to resurrect us out of the slime pit we're living in.
Brian, thanks for sharing some of the details there. I've met a number of people who've had near-death experiences. Former student at Bio, it was life-changing for her. You're the first I've met with a hellish near-death experience, to use that term. Have you met others that have had experiences like yours?
Yes, I have over the years. When I speak someplace, I have a lot of people in the audience come up, and lots of them. I had a hellish experience, and I saw it. I OD'd, and I came back, and they resuscitated me. I'm so afraid. What do I do with this? I said, you should just write some stuff down and start telling them people about it. Don't be afraid. Just warn people. There are lots of people I've come across. And then I wanted to say earlier is I was, some people who contacted me afterwards. I don't remember how it all happened, and I told them my hellish experience. Oh, no, you can't have a hellish experience. You have too many positive ones. And I go, I can't, people can debate whatever they want to believe, but it comes down to, are you making Jesus into your own image and likeness, that God must accept your terms? Or else, and most people, Jesus just wants you back to put back our humanity back inside of us. We lost what it means to be a human being due to the fall of man, and we living in the cesspool right now, worldwide. We're seeing all the evidence of the cesspool, and he's here to fix it through his people. And you can accept or reject it. It's pretty simple.
So, last question for you. The studies that I've read, a lot of people with these kinds of experiences are reluctant to talk about it for a range of reasons. People are reluctant to talk about near-death experiences because they think people might think they're crazy. A hellish near-death experience, people might think I uniquely deserve hell, which is not the point of your experience. And yet, studies I've seen as low as 5%, some as high as 20% of near-death experiences are hellish. So I don't know exactly where that stat lands, but it's more common than a lot of people say. And yet this happened in 1980. I guess, why did you wait till 2005 to publish a book? And how do you remember so much from then?
Well, right after I had it, I wrote down stuff. I wrote down some of the language. That's why a lot of cuss words were in it, whether somebody speak. And I was trying to process it. So I tried to write a book right after it happened. And it was about maybe 70, 80 pages long. It was just a real brief narrative. I go, nobody will want to hear this. This is boring. And I drew a spiral. I put details in it, but it was very more like a technical manual. And I said, this is just not it. And so I had my notes, and my cousin put some of it together to correct some of the spelling and stuff. And so I began writing the manuscript, and throwing it away, starting again, throwing it away, starting again, over and over. I just couldn't capture it. And I went into college, and I went to college and all. Went back to college, and then I heard about creative nonfiction. And I go, why don't I just write it in that format? Use true events in my life, compile them up. Don't use anybody's real name. Composite characters,
Sure.
and then it flowed. Then I was able to tell it. When I did that, it just flowed. So I took my notes and took everything from what I had, and there, the Library of Congress copy is a lot longer because there's chapters that were edited out and other things that were edited out. But yeah.
Well, Brian Melvin, super fascinating account. I'm guessing some of my viewers and listeners have reactions all over the map because we've never had an interview quite like this. Well, I have a ton more questions and thoughts for you. I'm going to suggest people, if you want to go further, do a couple things. I did an analysis with my friend Steve Miller on hellish near-death experiences. Where is the data? What do they show? You can watch that. We'll link to that below. And that's kind of a top-down analysis of the study. Steve Miller is I would consider one of the world's experts on near-death experiences. Or you can check out Brian Melvin's book. It's called A Land Unknown, Hell's Dominion. And you can read his account for yourself and assess it. Brian, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing your story. This obviously brought back some emotions for you, so I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing with my audience. Really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having. Could I just say one thing? I hope it's in the interview.
Sure.
Is that with data and studies, I used to be very analytical, but hell is so deceptive. So a lot of people actually see hell and they come back and report all kinds of things for a reason to keep people away from Jesus. I want to let that sit in. That is not included in data, nor is it heavily researched. Because people, I like to be nice to people. They have positive things. I don't lambaste them or nothing. I'm very polite, but I just try to politely say that you may not have been where you thought you were. You could have been. I don't know. It just depends. But yeah, I just want to let people know that you can't just go by data alone.
Good stuff.
The people don't know how deceptive these creatures are.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. That's why some of the stuff you shared about being able to confirm things externally add a level of corroboration there. And we could go down that road in some more depth, but that's one of the things that I bring to near-death experiences is not only does somebody have a story, did it change their life? And are there ways to confirm and corroborate the account? And people can read your story for themselves and they can assess it. But I appreciate you bringing that in at the end. All right, friends, let me know what you think. This is a very different interview than I have ever done before. So you can put your comments in here. Let me know. Be very curious what your take is. But we are certainly coming back to near-death experiences, afterlife apologetics, other supernatural phenomena, because I think the supernatural realm is real. I do believe there's a heaven and a hell. I believe that Jesus is God. And these kind of disruptions are going to challenge us to think about that and confront our creator. So again, Brian, really appreciate your time. Fascinating conversation, and blessings to you and your family.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. You have a great day.
You got it. Friends, make sure you hit subscribe. We got some other fascinating stories coming up. You won't want to miss it. And if you want to study apologetics, we would love to have you at Taub School of Theology. Have a full distance program. We've had classes in afterlife apologetics where we hear accounts like this, but really stories. We examine some of the stories themselves. And we have a certificate program below if you're not ready for a master's degree with a very significant discount. So check that out. All right, we'll see you next time. Brian, thanks again.
Thank you.